Hi everyone, welcome to Reading Corner. I hope you're having a good day. In fact, I hope you're having a really good week. Wherever you are, whether it's Monday or Friday or one of the days in between, I hope it's going well with you. And I'm really, really glad that you've dropped in today to have just a little bit of a break and listen to some stories and read along with me. First up today, we're going to read about Little Miss Lucky. And then we're going to read about Mr. Brave. And then finally, we're going to read I Had Trouble in Getting to Solla Sollew by Dr. Seuss. I really hope you enjoy these books because I know I love reading them to you. So let's begin with Little Miss Lucky. Little Miss Lucky lived on top of a hill in Horseshoe Cottage. One evening, after supper, she went to bed with a book she had bought that morning. She loved to read, and the place she loved most to read was in bed. Do you like reading in bed? Lots of people do. It was a cold and windy winter's night outside, but Little Miss Lucky snuggled down under the blankets and was as warm and as cozy as could be. She opened the book and started to read the first page. But as she did so, there was a knock on the front door of Horseshoe Cottage. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, bother, she thought to herself. Who can that be this time of night? Knock, knock, knock. There it was again. She put her book down, got out of bed, and went downstairs to see who was there. Little Miss Lucky unlocked the door and opened it. But there was nobody there. She peered outside. Nobody. She went outside. Nobody. Then suddenly, there was a huge gust of wind and the door banged behind her. Bang! She nearly jumped out of her spin. She tried to open the door, but it had locked itself and she couldn't open it. Oh dear, she gasped. What am I to do? I wonder why this story is called Little Miss Lucky. She ran around Horseshoe Cottage to see if she could get in through the back door, but just as she did so, there was an even bigger gust of wind. A really huge, enormous, gigantic gust of wind. It was so strong that it lifted Little Miss Lucky off her feet and up into the air. And up! Help! She cried. Somebody help! But her little voice was lost in the whistling of the wind. Higher and higher she was taken, up and up into the night. But then just as suddenly as it had started, the wind stopped. And there was Little Miss Lucky, high in the air. She started to fall down and down. I wonder why this story is called Little Miss Lucky. Faster and faster she fell towards the ground. Oh, she landed in a haystack in the corner of a field. Little Miss Lucky gasped for breath and felt to see if she had broken any bones. But the haystack had cushioned her fall, and apart from feeling very frightened, she was all right. She climbed down from the haystack and ran as fast as she could across the field, looking for somebody to help her, looking for anybody to help her. It was very dark, and Little Miss Lucky could scarcely see where she was going. There was a tree in the middle of the field, and Little Miss Lucky tripped over one of its roots. It was then that she heard a voice. Hello, it said, who have we here? Little Miss Lucky shivered. Who's there? She whispered. I, chuckled the tree, am the midnight tree. And as Little Miss Lucky looked at the tree, she saw that it had a face. Not the sort of face you would like to see on a cold, dark, windy winter's night. I wonder why this story is called Little Miss Lucky. The tree grinned and reached out one of its branches. Oh, Little Miss Lucky jumped to her feet and ran away as fast as ever her legs could carry her. But as she ran, she heard a noise behind her. Thud, thud, thud. She looked over her shoulder and couldn't believe her eyes. Thud, thud, thud. Oh, the tree was chasing her. She ran faster than ever. Thud, thud, thud. But the tree was getting closer. Thud, thud, thud. Little Miss Lucky stopped and shut her eyes tight. Thud. I wonder why this story is called Little Miss Lucky. Thud. Little Miss Lucky opened her eyes wide. The book she had been reading in bed had slipped from her fingers and fallen onto the bedroom floor. Thud! She had fallen asleep reading her book. It had all been a dream, a dream. No knock at the door, no terrible wind, no midnight tree. A dream. And now you know why this story is called Little Miss Lucky, don't you? Sometimes we can have dreams that are a little bit yucky, a little bit scary, and then it's good to wake up and remind ourselves it's just a dream. But it's sometimes a bit hard to feel that way in the middle of the night, and that's when we have to be brave, like Mr. Brave. So we're going to read about his story now. Now, he didn't have a dream, but he did have some things that were a bit scary happen to him, and he had to be brave. Mr. Brave is not as strong as Mr. Strong. He is not as tall as Mr. Tall, but that does not stop him being brave, as you will soon see. Now, last Tuesday, little Miss Bossy invited Mr. Brave to tea. And don't be late, she shouted down the phone. It was a very stormy day, but Mr. Brave knew that little Miss Bossy's temper was worse. So he set off for little Miss Bossy's house, hurrying along as fast as he could to make sure that he was not late for tea. Along the way, he heard a cry for help. It was Mr. Messy. He had been blown into the river by the wind. Mr. Brave did not want to be late for little Miss Bossy, but being the brave fellow he was, he jumped in and rescued Mr. Messy. Wet right through, he hurried along the lane. Suddenly, he heard someone sobbing loudly. Who could it be? It was little Miss Somersault. She was balancing on a tightrope tied between two tall trees. Oh, Mr. Brave, I'm so lonely, she sobbed. Nobody will come and play on my tightrope. They are all too frightened of heights. You're so brave. Won't you come and join me? Mr. Brave looked up at little Miss Somersault. Then he thought about little Miss Bossy, but being the brave fellow he was, he took pity on little Miss Somersault and climbed up to the tightrope. They chatted away happily for a while until Mr. Brave happened to look down. Little Miss Somersault, look! The rope is going to snap. We're going to fall, and it's such a long way to the bottom. Oh, calamity! Oh, help! He cried out in panic. Be brave, Mr. Brave, said little Miss Somersault. And without more ado, she carried him safely back down to the ground. Oh, thank you, said Mr. Brave with a sigh of relief. Little Miss Somersault said goodbye, and Mr. Brave was left on his own, shaking like a leaf. I don't deserve to be called Mr. Brave. I was scared stiff. Thank goodness no one knows my secret, he said to himself. And nobody does know his secret. Or do they? Little Miss Trouble just happened to be passing and had seen everything. And what she had seen and heard had given her an idea, a very naughty idea. She grinned a mischievous grin. Hey, come here, everybody. Come and see this, she shouted at the top of her voice. Very quickly, a large crowd gathered. I have an announcement, announced little Miss Trouble. Did you know that Mr. Brave isn't brave at all? No, it can't be true, said the crowd all together. It is true, said little Miss Trouble, and I'll prove it to you. Mr. Brave, she continued, I dare you to walk across that tightrope. Mr. Brave looked up at the tightrope, and all the crowd looked up at the tightrope. Then all the crowd looked at Mr. Brave. Mr. Brave suddenly remembered something, a very important something. Just look at the time, he cried. I'm going to be late for tea at little Miss Bossy's. Mustache, he cried, and he ran off as quickly as possible. Hooray, cheered the crowd, and they all clapped and applauded Mr. Brave. Why are you all cheering him, she cried. Little Miss Trouble looked puzzled. Why are you all cheering him, she cried. He ran away. He isn't brave at all. Oh, yes, he is, they all shouted. Would you turn up late for tea at little Miss Bossy's house? Little Miss Trouble thought for a moment. Gosh, he is brave after all, she said in awe. You know, being brave doesn't mean that you're not afraid. It means that you push through even when you feel afraid. That is doing the brave thing. Now we're going to read about someone who had to be brave and also had to try to get over quite a few troubles. I had trouble in getting to Solla Sollew. I was once happy and carefree and young, and I lived in a place called the Valley of Vung. And nothing, not anything ever went wrong until, well, one day I was walking along and I guess I got careless. I guess I got gawking at daisies and not looking where I was walking. And that's how it started. Sock! What a shock! I stubbed my big toe on a very hard rock, and I flew through the air and I went for a sail, and I sprained the main bone in the tip of my tail. Now, I never had ever had troubles before, so I said to myself, I don't want any more. If I watch out for rocks with my eyes straight ahead, I'll keep out of trouble forever, I said. But watching ahead, well, it just didn't work. I was watching those rocks, then I felt a hard jerk. A very fresh green-headed Quilligan quail sneaked up from the back and went after my tail. And I learned there are troubles of more than one kind. Some come from ahead and some come from behind. So I said to myself, now I'll just have to start to be twice as careful and be twice as smart. I'll watch out for trouble in front and back sections by aiming my eyeballs in different directions. I found this to be quite a difficult stunt, but now I was safe, both behind and in front. Then new troubles came from above and below, a scritch at my neck and a scrimp at my toe. And now I was really in trouble, you know, the rocks and the quail and the scritch and the skrink. I had so many troubles, I just couldn't think. There I was, all completely surrounded by trouble, when a chap rumbled up in a one-wheeler wobble. Young fellow, he said, what has happened to you has happened to me and to other folks too. So I'll tell you what I have decided to do. I'm off to the city of Solla Sollew on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. It's not very far, and my camel is strong. He'll get us there fast, so hop on, come along. I jumped up behind him. Then all through that day, the wobble wobbed on in a wobblesome way. The road got more bumpy, more rocky, more tricky. By midnight, I tell you, my stomach felt icky. So I said, Mister, please, when do we get to that wonderful town? Are we almost there yet? Young fellow, he told me, don't get in a stew. At sunrise, we'll drive into Solla Sollew, and you'll have no more troubles. I promise, I do. But when dawn finally came and the darkness got light, that wonderful city was nowhere in sight. Instead of the city, we ran into trouble. Our camel was sick and he started to bubble. We had to pull him in the one-wheeler wobble. So there we were in a dreadful position. Our camel now needed a camel physician. Now, doctors for camels are not often seen, especially on mountains. They're far, far between. But we pulled that old wobble and set out to find some doctor while dragging our camel behind. I pulled and pulled and pulled. The next thing I knew, I was pulling the camel and wobble chap too. Now really, I thought, this is rather unfair, but he said, don't you fuss, I'm doing my share. This is called teamwork. I furnish the brains, you furnish the muscles, the aches and the pains. I'll pick the best roads, tell you just where to go, and we'll find a good doctor more quickly, you know. Then he sat and he worked with his brain and his tongue, and he bossed me around just because I was young. He told me go left, then he told me go right. And that's what he told me all day and all night. Next morning, we located Dr. Sam Snell, who knew about tonsils and camels as well. Our camel, he said, had a bad case of bleaks and should lie flat in bed for at least 20 weeks. I was tired. How I wanted to crawl in that bed, but the wobble chap sent me away and he said, your troubles are practically all at an end. Just run down that hill and around the next bend and you'll come to the Happy Way bus route, my friend. The Happy Way bus leaves at 4:42 and will take you directly to Solla Sollew on the banks of the beautiful River Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. Well, the bus stop was there and that part was just fine, but tapped on a stick was a very small sign saying notice to passengers using our line. We are sorry to say that our driver, Butch Mayers, ran over 4 nails and has punctured all tyres. So until further notice, the 4:42 cannot possibly take you to Solla Sollew. But I wish you a most pleasant journey by feet. Signed, Bus Line President Horace P. Sweet. So I went on by feet thanks to Horace P. Sweet, and that Horace P. Sweet almost ruined my feet. 100 miles later, my feet were so sore, then wouldn't you know it, it started to pour. I was drenched to the skin when a chap in a slicker splashed up and he yelled, it's the midwinter jicker. The midwinter jicker came early this year and it's not going to be very comfy around here. Any fool would get out, so I've packed up my things and I'm off to my granddaddy's out in Palm Springs. Take cover, he yelled. Use my house if you wish. Then the chap in the slicker splashed off like a fish. I ran in the house and I fell in a heap. I needed my rest, but I just couldn't sleep. Did you ever sleep when your feet were like ice, with a family of owls and a family of mice? I listened all night to the growls and the yowls and the chattering teeth of those mice and those owls, while the midwinter jicker howled horrible howls. I tossed and I flipped and I flopped and I flepped. It's 5:15 when I finally slept. Then I dreamed I was sleeping on billowy billows of soft silk and satin marshmallow stuffed pillows. I dreamed I was sleeping in Solla Sollew on the banks of the beautiful River Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. Then I woke up and it just wasn't true. I was crashing downhill in a flubulous flood with suds in my eyes and my mouth full of mud, my nose full of water, my ears full of shrieks of the owls flying off with the mice in their beaks. And I said to myself, no, I really don't see why troubles like this have to happen to me. I floated 12 days without toothpaste or soap. I practically almost had given up hope, when someone up high shouted, here, catch the rope. Then I knew that my troubles had come to an end and I climbed up the rope calling, thank you, my friend. I got to the top, but it wasn't a friend, and I saw that my troubles were not at an end. A big man on a horse scared me out of my wits. He bellowed, I'm General Genghis Khan Schmitz. There's a war going on and it's time that you knew every lad in this land has his duty to do. We're marching to battle. We need you, my boy. We're about to attack. We're about to destroy the perilous cruiser of Pomplemoose Pass. So get into line. You're private, first class. He gave me a shooter and one little bean, which was not very much, if you see what I mean. And he yelled, get that cruiser, attack without fear. The glorious moment of victory is near. and the glorious general led the advance with a glorious swish of his sword and his lance, and a glorious clank of his tin-plated pants. Then we went round a corner and found that, alas, there was more than one Poozer in Pomplamoose Pass. And Genghis Khan Schmidt shouted out to his men, "This happens in war every now and again. Sometimes you are winners and sometimes you are losers. We never can win against so many Poozers. And so I suggest that it's time to retreat." And the army raced off on its tin-plated feet. There I was with more Poozers than I'd ever seen. There I was with my shooter and only one bean. There I was, and I thought, will I ever get through to the wonderful city of Solla Sollew on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. I had terrible trouble staying alive. Then I saw an old pipe that said vent number 5. I didn't have time to find out what that meant, but the vent had a hole, and the hole's where I went. Well, that vent where I went was a sort of a funnel that led me down into a frightful black tunnel. The traffic down there was a mess, I must say, with billions of birds going all the wrong way. They bumped me with bikes and they banged me with dishes. I ran into ladders, beds, bottles, and fishes. I skidded on rubbish. I fell in a horn. Troubles. I wished I had never been born. I was down there 3 days in that bird-filled up place. At least 8,000 times I fell smack on my face. I injured 3 fingers, both thumbs and both lips, my shin bone, my backbone, my wishbone and hips. And what's more, I was starved. I had nothing to eat, and damp, was it damp? I grew moss on my feet. Then, just when I thought I could stand it no more, by chance, I discovered a tiny trapdoor. I popped my head out. The great sky was sky blue, and I knew from the flowers I'd finally come through to the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo. I couldn't be far now from Solla Sollew. There it was, with its glittering towers in the air. I'd made it. I'd done it. At last I was there. And I knew that I'd left all my troubles behind when a chap at a doorway that shimmered and shined waved me a wave that was friendly and kind. "Welcome," he said as he gave me his hand. "Welcome, my son, to this beautiful land. Welcome to sweet, sunny Solla Sollew, where we never have troubles, at least very few. As a matter of fact, we have only just one. Imagine just one little trouble, my son, and this one little trouble, as you will now see, is this one little trouble I have with this key. There is only one door into Solla Sollew, and we have a key-slapping slippard, we do. This troublesome slippard moved into my door 2 weeks ago, Tuesday at 3:45. Since then, I can't open this door anymore. And I can't kill the slippard. It's very bad luck to kill any slippard, and that's why we're stuck, and why no one gets in and the town's gone to pot. It's a terrible state of affairs, is it not?" "And so," said the doorman of Solla Sollew, "my job at the door here is finished. I'm through, and I'll tell you what I have decided to do. I'm leaving," he said, "leaving Solla Sollew on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where we never have troubles, at least very few, and I'm off to the city of Bullabooball on the banks of the beautiful river Woowall, where they never have troubles, no troubles at all. Come along with me," he said as he ran, "and you'll never have any more troubles, young man." I'd have no more troubles. That's what the man said. So I started to go, but I didn't. Instead, I did some quick thinking inside of my head. Then I started back home to the valley of Vung. I know I'll have troubles. I'll maybe get stung. I'll always have troubles. I'll maybe get bit by that green-headed quail on the place where I sit. But I've bought a big bat and I'm all ready, you see. Now my troubles are going to have troubles with me. The end. Sometimes we do have troubles and we think, gosh, it'd be really nice to not have any troubles anymore. But trying to go to a place with no troubles is actually even more trouble. I hope that you enjoyed these stories today. I know that I love reading these stories to you, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you next time at Reading Corner. But until then, wherever you are, whether it's a Monday or a Friday or any day in between, I hope that you're having a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye for now.